Shots up here. Isn't this a great day? Good morning, everyone. Let's get us set here. Brad, you ready? Adam, you ready? Great. Good morning, everyone. Before we get started with the launching of CountyStat, which I'm very excited about, I'd just like to introduce a couple of people who've been working on this issue for quite a while since this administration has taken place. First of all, our acting CAO, and knock on wood, by tomorrow will be our CAO, Brad Seaman. And it says on here I should mention something about Brad's work in the private sector, which for those of you who don't know, Brad spent his whole career developing a business that he and his wife took from, what, 2 employees to now over 100? 150. Until I browbeat him into coming here and helping me do the same things for this government that he did in the private sector. Many of you know his work on the hospital, and then the fact that we, after 15 years, signed an MOU with University of Maryland Medical System, the state, and Prince George's County, and Dimensions. And most recently, and this is something we talked about during the budget, and that is he led the effort of doing, along with the deputy CAOs, doing something that I didn't think could be done, and that is to get a strategic plan together for all of our agencies and get them under one vision and one mission. And so we're glad to have him as a key component of CountyStat, and we put this on his purview. The other person is our deputy CAO for Budget and Finance, Tom Himmler. Is Tom here? Thomas, congratulations. We're very excited, you know. We also have, who's been working hand in hand since the very beginning with this project, Holly's son. Where's Holly? Excited, aren't you? And finally, you know, I'd like to introduce the people that I tasked with putting this together. Probably a lot of you know, during the campaign, I talked about Jim Collins' book, From Good to Great, and about getting the right people on the bus and heading the bus in the right direction and using that for innovation. And I knew I wanted to do a CountyStat, especially after seeing what they had done in Baltimore City and in the District of Columbia. But I knew I needed to find the right person to come lead the team effort. And little did he know, when we asked him to come in and talk to us about what the governor was doing on state stat, that we were really interviewing him and recruiting him to come here and to help us out. And so, you know, I'd like to introduce Adam Ortiz, who is manager for this effort. Many of you know his innovative work as mayor of Edmonston, making it one of the greenest streets on the East Coast, and having done a great job. So we're excited about him and his team. Alex Krugoff and Jenny Nevins and Bernard Holloway, along with our folks from Budget and Management, have done a terrific job. As I said, this is not just an accountability tool. It's an effort by us to make sure our government is as transparent as possible. But it's also a way of us measuring our progress and taking some of the best ideas from around the nation and vetting them through a process. So with our CountyStat, what we hope to do is not only implement those practices, make our government more efficient, make it more transparent, but become the leader. And that's what I want Prince George's County to be. It's a leader in innovation, leader in good government. And so this means that we're well on our way, and you'll see today, to being the role model for this region and hopefully for the nation. And I look forward to great articles about how this has changed government. I will end before I turn it over to Brad Seaman with something I said to Adam Ortiz when he took this job. I said, my re-election efforts are dependent upon CountyStat working. So believe it or not, our government is in your hands. So today we take one giant step forward to making sure Prince George's County is what it should be, and that is a model to the rest of the world. With that, Brad Seaman.
Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for being here. I'd also like to thank our department heads, many of which are here this morning to support the rollout of CountyStat. As the county executive mentioned, this is an important initiative for our administration. More than anything, it's a management tool that will help us to ensure accountability and achieving the results that we want to achieve. He mentioned the strategic planning process that we went through in the fall, and I think that it's important to link CountyStat to the process that we went to, because you can't measure if you don't know where you want to get. And so through our very abbreviated strategic planning process, we developed a vision, mission, and principles that I'd like to not share with you word for word today, but just to talk about a couple of things that are in them, because if you really take them apart and in some cases read between the lines, you can see what it is that this county executive and this administration considers to be very important. With respect to the vision statement that's on the screen right now, the thing to remember about that is it's aspirational. It's really what we want to be in the future. It talks about Prince George's County currently being recognized as a leader within the Washington metropolitan area, but it also talks about what we want to be and what we want to be known for. And so you see four things there: thriving economy, great schools, safe neighborhoods, and high quality health care. The next paragraph talks about some of the other areas that we find important as well. You will see that it talks there about being sustainable and therefore recognizing needing to take care of the environment. And it talks about innovative and results-oriented practices, which really leads to our high-performance government that we'll talk about in a minute. So that's what we want to be. In terms of what our current focus is, that's the mission statement. And we understand that in order to get to achieving the vision, what we need to do is we need to work on our mission, which simply is to transform the quality of life for our residents, visitors, and businesses by providing, one, excellent customer services that achieve high levels of customer satisfaction, and getting there through integrity, accountability, and convenience. So again, CountyStat is a tool that we will use to help us to achieve that. We also thought it was important to have a set of standards by which county employees use to deal with each other and also with the public. And so we developed principles. And I think it's important to say that all of this was not a top-down exercise. There was significant involvement from, of course, the county executive, but also senior staff and our department heads as well. And they gave input, and not only did they give input, but we listened and we made changes based on some of the things that they suggested. The principles that we have here are 13 principles that we thought were important to being the foundation for the way that this administration will conduct itself. And I won't go through all 13. I think that with respect to CountyStat, the things that are important here in this 13 are, number one, talking about accountability and execution. And that's part of what CountyStat allows us to ensure, about being technology-driven and innovative. You'll hear discussions later about the use of data to make decisions, which then leads us to measurable results, and again, making evidence-based decisions, not decisions that we think are the right thing, but that we think are the right thing based on statistics and information that we have that allows us to make informed decisions. And then the last piece, before I turn it over to Adam, are basically the administration's priorities and their and our cross-agency goals, which I don't expect you to be able to read there on the right side of the page. But the important thing is to show that there's linkage. We have the 7 areas that we've talked about: the economy, education, neighborhoods, healthcare, human services, environment, and then also high-performance government operations. And each one of those things, as you see on the right, has somewhere between 3 and 5 sub-goals that the agencies are focused on. And the idea is that if they achieve those, then we'll achieve, the county executive will achieve success in the 7 priority areas that the county executive has set forth. What CountyStat is helping us to do is to measure and make sure that we're achieving those things that are on the right, and that we're being innovative, using best practices, and sort of thinking out of the box, and holding people accountable for helping us to achieve those things on the right, so that they will lead us to success in the priority areas on the left. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Adam, who will talk a little bit, and then turn it over to his team, which will give you a little bit more detail about how the program works.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman, and good morning to everybody. Our program has been about 6 months in development. Today is our public launch, and we're really excited about that. Our model, as we're going to discuss in a little more detail from our analyst team, is what we think is a model that incorporates a lot of the best practices in terms of government accountability based on our survey across the nation. This sort of stat setup, and we'll use the word stat as a noun, a verb, you name it, but it represents just a culture of accountability and being data-driven, evidence-based in our decision-making, that we don't shoot from the hip. We don't make big decisions based on assumptions, but we test hypotheses, and we try to figure out what works, and then we implement that policy, and then we measure it at the end and make any changes. This sort of culture of the stat culture began in the 80s, or at least came to prominence in the 80s in New York City, and it was a very top-down sort of approach implemented in the police department. And from there, it's evolved into the model that we've incorporated here, and I'm going to briefly introduce it, and then I'm going to have our analyst team kind of take you through the program. But it incorporates 3 major aspects. The first is analysis of government data, policies, and procedures. The second is it provides accountability, face-to-face accountability. And most importantly, we think that those two, that the analysis and accountability really only provide the basis for promoting innovation. And that's unique in a way in stat programs. Often they're about number crunching and about data and going through tables and charts, and that's important. But how we use that information to make the most innovative decisions possible really is what this is all about. It's about governing it as effectively as we possibly can. So you'll notice that this is not a typical press conference setup. We're not at a podium. There's not, a gaggle of reporters out in the audience. CountyStat is kind of about getting into the weeds. It's not a top-down necessarily, although we do have the power of top-down, and it is a hierarchical structure, but really our problem-solving model is collaborative, where we sit around a table, we present information with the agencies where the press are sitting now, and we present this information in our data analysis, and then we have a discussion about problem-solving together with all the decision makers at the table. And sometimes that includes personnel, budget, as well as the agencies. Sometimes it includes stakeholders from outside. But we want to emphasize that our model is a collaborative problem-solving approach and not a top-down authoritative model. So we're replicating this format a little bit in this press conference here to give you a feel of how it works. And often in our CountyStat sessions, we have a couple words of introduction from the management team represented up here, and then our analysts present their findings and recommendations. So in this course, I'm going to invite them to take this through.
Just real brief before we go get them. I do want to recognize the fact that we have Councilmember Mel Franklin here with us, and thank you for coming for the official public launching. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what we're going to do next in the presentation is walk through some of the features of CountyStat, which I know the management team kind of already highlighted, but we wanted to drill down in more detail. The first feature that we wanted to discuss is the fact that CountyStat sessions come from an evidence-based paradigm. So the picture that's in reference there is back when the time of Columbus sailed the world and people thought the world was flat. And obviously, they thought the world was flat because that was a commonly held assumption, not because there was data or evidence that could back that up. And so one of the things we ask when agencies come in to talk about common issues and common problems is to both share with us information that we can analyze so that we can have a really informed conversation, but also if they have assumptions or assertions about why services aren't getting delivered or a particular phenomenon is happening, that they bring facts to the table to back that up. And it's all in support of what Brad said, which is that you can't manage what you can't measure. And in order to figure out what we can measure, we really have to have an awareness as an entire county government of what we collectively know. And too often in government, information is caught up in silos. There might be one person that has a spreadsheet about properties and public works that somebody in environmental resources needs to understand and somebody that park and planning needs to understand. And so one of the goals of CountyStat is to try to integrate information across a number of different agencies, both within the County Executive's Administration and from other partners throughout local, state, and federal government. Once we've aggregated this information, part of what's critical is to ensure that we're transparent in its usage. The public pays for all of the services and infrastructure that we build, and they deserve to know how those dollars are being spent and if they're being well spent. But even more than that, this also provides an opportunity by putting the information about the management cases that we produce, the follow-up memos that we have, and the responses that our agency provide. By putting all of that online, it allows partners, whether it's nonprofit organizations in the community or think tanks and some folks that are doing some of the most innovative research on these subjects around the country, to take our data and help us see things that we might not be able to see ourselves. And then the final piece is to really align the work of folks across county government. So if you have an issue, like we'll talk about later as it relates to foreclosures, there are challenges when you have several different agencies that touch that issue, but if all of them are all pulling in different directions, you aren't getting the full measure and the full impact of the collective weight that you can put behind that effort. And so one of the goals of CountyStat is in the same way that the members of the media are around this table and all have cards, during a normal CountyStat session, you'd have agencies from several different aspects of county government around the table talking about a common problem and how they want to achieve results. The final piece, in terms of the features of the CountyStat program, is focusing on being accountable. And you know, Ken Lay, who was the former CEO of Enron and who wasn't accountable, didn't go to jail, in part because of not having public disclosure, in part because there wasn't a verification that they were making evidence-based decisions. This is important. So one of the biggest elements of CountyStat is the fact that we have follow-up memos and we have constant and consistent follow-up from the analyst team to make sure that the reforms recommended actually permeate throughout the government.
There were 3 primary models that were studied in our research for the county stat. The first one was the Baltimore City stat, and what we determined is that they primarily did departmental reviews that focused on requiring the agencies to regular review and relentless follow-up. The second one was the Maryland State stat. There too, we also saw that they focused more on departmental reviews with regular agency review and relentless follow-up, as well as offering thematic components, particularly with the base stat. The next model that we reviewed was the State of Washington's GMAP. Here we realized that this particular sessions were mostly thematic sessions that stressed the presence of decision makers and coordinated all resources around thematic areas. And after our research of the various models, we determined our best practices to align knowledge and resources through thematic sessions, to convene key decision makers on a regular basis, to include jurisdictional benchmarking, as well to research in order to drive innovation.
Magically.
The challenges before our county are multifaceted and interrelated. Therefore, our responses must involve many disciplines working together. Here I'm going to kind of walk you through briefly on the county stat session cycle. It first begins with county stat staff collecting and analyzing data for a specific reporting period, usually. After that, the team summarizes major findings and recommendations and prepare presentations to be reviewed by the management team. After that review, then a stat session is scheduled, and agency departments and their staff are available to answer questions that are formulated in response to the data analysis. After which, the county stats team follows up with an action memo to agencies to implement reforms. Agencies are tasked with various responsibilities, including improving operations and enhancing the delivery of county services.
What we're going to do now is walk you through an example of some of our work. give you an idea of how a session works. We recently did a session on inmate education and workforce development. It was a thematic session, so we worked with the Department of Corrections, Office of Central Services, and Prince George's Community College. First, we looked at our recidivism rate, one of the goals of creating safer streets. Looking at the chart above, you can see our recidivism rate over the past 5 years. One of the things we wanted to try and figure out is how can we lower that? Well, education was a key element of that. So we took a look at the education offerings over at the Department of Corrections. Gives you an idea of some of the programs that we have over there. Next, we wanted to see where we are in comparison to other jurisdictions. So we looked at our GED enrollment and compared it to Montgomery County, Fairfax County, Howard County, and Prince George's County. Then we looked at the GED and diplomas that were issued by those same jurisdictions. As you can see, there's varying degrees of education levels being attained by inmates across the multiple jurisdictions. And you can see where we rest in that. Next, we looked at best practices. Basically, we wanted to figure out how people are making gains. We started with looking at the Department of Education. They pointed us in a direction and looking at how correctional facilities have been successful in reducing their recidivism rate through education, mostly through partnering with community colleges in those areas.
On the area of collaborations, this is a spatial representation of the interagency collaborations required to pull off the auto technology program. We performed a cost-benefit analysis on actually doing the historic norm of reestablishing this program by hiring a hiring a CTC2 and starting the program back up, and there would be a small savings. What we decided to do was look at alternatives, and one of the alternatives was to actually take advantage of the community college's adjunct faculty function, and using that instead of a full-time county employee, we estimated we could save about $46,000 per year during the first year. We also drew some findings and recommendations based on those. The first finding was basically the department claims they have a very low recidivism rate for their participants in the programs, and we're asking them to actually track those and report back, which they're now on.
We also, because of the limited financial resources in the county, we asked the Department of Corrections to work with Prince George's Community College as well as OCC to develop a program. You can actually find out more details and see the entire presentation online. We post all of this stuff on a regular basis.
So, as I mentioned earlier, we've been in a pilot phase for about 6 months, and just I want to, go back in time and give you an idea of some of the work that we've done to date, and also a little bit of the work ahead. So these are a listing of the 8 sessions that we've conducted in the past. Information from these sessions will be posted or are now posted on our website, so you can see some of the work that we've done and how some of these issues are unfolding here in the county. We will post and make public information with the exceptions of sensitive public safety or personnel matters. Upcoming, we're doing a follow-up session on, based on our work looking at the foreclosure problem here in Prince George's. We're focusing specifically on neighborhood stabilization, which goes a little bit beyond foreclosures, but also about stabilizing property values in certain areas using different techniques and best practices that we've been studying from across the country. Nightclub violence, many of you are familiar with the police department led by Chief McGaugh initiative last year focusing on problem and violent nightclubs. So there will be a follow-up session on our inspection regime with nightclubs and other properties. And then finally, 911 response times, how quick our operators are picking up the phone to be able to get emergency services out to our residents. And we can talk more about that, but that's some of the stuff that's on the horizon. I want to focus just a little bit on the culture that we're trying to promote here in county government through county staff, through our county stat principles. The first and most important is that in all things we expect excellence at every level at all times. Secondly, to empathize with the perspective of residents and customers. We don't want to think like bureaucrats, we want to think like residents who are trying to access services and have expectations for how accessible and easy it is to work with government. The third is that there's always 1,000 reasons not to do something, but there's also 1,000 reasons to do something. So we want to focus positively on making progress, not excuses. Fourth, as was mentioned earlier, we want to know what we know here in this government. There's a lot of information, a lot of expertise spread out over many agencies all over the place, but we don't always share that information. We don't always get the benefit from that expertise and aligning that knowledge and resources. So we want to be able to know what we know so we can make the best decisions and marshal our resources effectively. Fifth, to trust but verify. So we appreciate an agency head's assertion that something is a certain way, but we also want to see the numbers or see the evidence behind it. So we want to make sure that we're on track. Sixth is that Prince George's County is not a fortress. We don't know everything here. There's a lot of innovative things that are being done in other places, so we want to draw from expertise at all sources. That expertise may be in Holland, or that expertise may be in Portland. That expertise may be at a truck driver who drives a snowplow truck in the Department of Public Works. We want to be open to getting information and expertise from just about any place, because we know that together, us at this table don't have all the answers. 7, we have to compete in this region and in this state. So we have to be innovative and forward-thinking and progressive. So we want to innovate at every opportunity. County Stat is not a chance to just look at numbers, but it's a chance to improve and to be the best that we possibly can. In 8, drawing on the principles that Governor O'Malley had instituted in Baltimore and the state of Maryland, is to follow up, follow up, follow up until the job gets done. I'm going to, in a second, take us into the launching of our website, which is live at this moment, to show you some of the resources that are available to the press and the public and government. But before I do, I just wanted to defer.
Barry, you're on TV.
Friends, that's an action photo of
There you go.
CountyStat. You know, that is live action right there. But I just wanted to defer to Holly if she had anything to add, and also to introduce the members of her team that have been helping out CountyStat that we haven't welcomed yet.
No, really, I think you articulate very well for the whole team. and as rightfully mentioned in several places, this is really a big collaboration and incorporates input not only from our county stat team, from executive office and our office only, but also from different departments there. So, and actually we get help from outside entities as well. Just want to emphasize that. My team, why don't you guys introduce yourself? Somewhere here.
OMB team. Rashim, stand up.
Shane Jones, OMB. And Philip Gear, OMB.
And Rick Miller with OMB.
Thank you.
Gabrielle, who we stole from County Community Affairs.
Yeah.
Gabrielle, why don't you introduce yourself?
Gabrielle McConnell. I'm actually the fiscal manager for community relations, as well as a team member with CountyStat.
Yes, and one of the reasons we did that is so you can see from CountyStat, not only are we going to make sure that we break down silos when we're dealing with the agencies, but even in the collaboration of CountyStat itself. The idea when we formed this was not to create another bureaucracy, but was to pick some of the best and brightest throughout the government, bring them together in these with knowledge base of the government, and then in addition bring in some young bright minds who are to ask very difficult questions, and then that collaboration will help us get to a more efficient, more transparent government. Adam.
Thanks. So welcome to Prince George's County Stat website. This is live right now, so this is our regular website, princeggeorgescounty.md.gov/CountyStat. Here you can access the information and the research that we've done to date. And just a couple features I'm going to pull out, and then we'll go to questions, is this one right here. This is the Session and Document
Bless you.
Archive. Bless you. And here you'll see the studies that we've done to date, the presentations that we've conducted, and follow-up memos and other information on a variety of issues. It's sortable by strategic issue area. In here you'll see earlier Mr. Seaman introduced the priority areas for the Baker administration. You'll see they correspond here. So safe neighborhoods is our public safety. You can do a sort and pull up all of the sessions and all the reports that we've done on public safety, etc. So that's a resource that we hope people will use and to provide more feedback and more education on the status of our work here on these issues. The other thing I want to highlight is this gallery. From every session, we're going to pull out any maps and charts that we think illustrate some of the important issues facing the county. So, so there's probably about 30, I think, just key charts and graphs, so the public can truly appreciate how we're doing here in the county and what we're looking at, and the seriousness with which we're tackling the issues for us. Finally, everything that we have will, with the exceptions of sensitive public safety or personnel information, will go up here. And we also will have Twitter and a Facebook feed. So, be sure to become our friend on Facebook, and we'll keep you updated, and we'll tweet you regularly, I'm sure. So, I pass the ball back to Mr. Seaman if he has anything to conclude.
No, I think you said it all.
Well, before we take questions, let me just say this, and how excited I am that this is finally getting off the ground. As Adam said, they have, it's been 6 months of actual running through agencies and asking questions. And I just would say this to our department heads. As you can see, our chief of police and corrections and department heads are here. It was a big task for them to not only take over these departments, but also to be willing to break down some of the barriers and sit around these tables and be asked tough questions and be willing to come back and go through that to make our government more efficient. But I think this is a great tool that's going to help us. I'm excited about it, and I hope the residents of Prince George's County are too. It's going to give them a chance to monitor their government and to see how effective we are. So, they did it before my term was over, so I'm happy to see that. And I kept asking them, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? When am I going to be able to go online and hit it? And so they've actually done that. So we're very pleased. With that, if there are any questions, we'll take those.
Just a quick technical question. Something you showed us on the website, Adam, where there's a page for important charts and graphs. It also says here, complete PowerPoint presentations of CountyStat meetings are going to be available. Is that on a different spot on the website, or is it just you guys picking parts of the presentation?
That means that this PowerPoint is in that press release when it comes online, not all PowerPoints.
But
Not all PowerPoints, just this one.
and the vast majority of PowerPoints are going to be in here, with the exception of the sensitive stuff. So here's the home page, Session and Document Archive. And here we even posted the presentation that we just provided on here, but we have PowerPoints from various issues.
Previous meetings already? Okay.
Yeah, so here's, for example, the presentation that Alex and Rick were talking about a minute ago about inmate education.
Okay.
So, so yeah, much of this information is available.
Can you kind of talk about, you guys have talked about how you guys can see the problems that are happening in different departments and sectors, but can you talk about how residents can communicate with you with problems that they might have, instead of maybe a top-down, more of a down-up way, or some form of communication where the residents can communicate with you guys?
Sure. One of the one of the ways that we designed our model is to not just use it to create accountability and feedback among decision makers, but we also need that accountability and feedback from the public, because there's a theory of feedback loops, that when you have many feedback loops, you're constantly finding flaws and weaknesses in your system, and you're able to address them faster. So successful businesses, successful governments, successful athletes all have regular feedback loops. So we have that feedback loop with the public. So in the first way, we provide the information, make it available on the website. So interested members of the public or press have the information to be able to see what's going on. We also have this prominent link here where they can fill out information, provide any feedback, ideas that they want. Notice that we don't require a return email address. So if there's an anonymous tip or, we just make it as easy as possible for people to feel comfortable to give their feedback. Also, most sessions will be open to the public, again, with the exception of very sensitive topics. So, residents are more than welcome to sit in. Although they can't participate, they're welcome to sit and observe their government in action.
Now, are these weekly meetings that you guys have where every Wednesday you guys sit together and residents can, if they want to be a part of this, or will you post that on the website?
Good question. They'll be posted on the calendar, which is located right here. And our next session, the launch, glad you made it, by the way. Here, April, we have a session scheduled on neighborhood stabilization on Friday the 6th at 10 o'clock. So residents can go check the calendar and see what's
Can
coming.
they watch online?
No, we're not going to have them streaming.
Before CountyStat, how slow would it take to resolve the issue, and how fast do you think it will be addressed now? Will residents be able to notice the immediate kind of difference between that time frame when resolving problems?
Before I answer that, I'm going to defer to some of the folks who might have been around a little longer than me to compare and contrast.
Well, I think that it depends on the particular issues you're talking about. I mean, for example, if you're talking about permitting or something like that, then clearly the idea is that as we look at the issue, look at how long it's taking to turn things around, implement a strategy to reduce that or improve it, the expectation is that it will improve. And as Adam talked about, the follow-up is important because, and again, it gets back to results. You look at what's been implemented, look and see if it's working, and if it's not, then you look at why it's not working and possibly try something else. There are other issues that aren't about cycle time or something like that. It might be more about economic development, increasing tax base, or creating jobs. So it depends on what the issue is, but overall, the idea is that by picking things that are important to the priority areas the county executive has set forth, looking at the data, getting a baseline of where we are, and then looking at what strategies we can use to improve that, and then looking at what the results are, the idea is that things will improve.
Right. And it's not just about as Brad said, not just about the response time. It's also about being more efficient with resources. So what we hope to find from CountyStat that, and I think Adam said this in his presentation, that or Bernard, where there are two agencies that are dealing with a subject matter that they both have some jurisdiction, that we're making sure that we're using the resources efficiently to get the best outcome, whether that is to prevent recidivism or whether that is to make sure that our streets are well lit in areas. But it's a matter of just making sure all the resources, so whether it's Department of Transportation or our education system, this will help us target those and thereby making sure we're using government efficiently and saving taxpayers money. The other thing it'll help us do is, like I said, when residents do come in and sit in a session and see what's going on, but either call us and say, everybody uses, there's a pothole that needs to be filled, and we can actually determine how long it takes for that pothole to be filled. And what it will help us do is see, one, whether we're using the right materials or not, to fill it. So if it's the same pothole that's becoming open every time it rains, then we look at the materials. So it's not just about the time, it's about efficiency, and it's about use of resources.
We have a question from
Were there county funds that were set aside to launch this program, and if so, a price tag?
Brett?
Sure. We did not create new money, so to speak, for this. We allocated parts of budgets to basically by people. We have a budget in the county executive's office. We have one and only in a certain amount of time for the individuals that you see here were allocated, and that is essentially the budget that's being used, or the resources that have been set aside to make the program happen. In terms of the staff that's working directly on it, that we're not borrowing from other places, it's about $300,000.
So far, I know this is still a trial process, but Adam, maybe you can talk about this. What programs have you seen that are deficient in the county and that need some improvement, or vice versa, programs that are working?
I can talk a little bit about some of the ones that we've addressed to date and that we've already seen some improvement. We've struggled to keep our 911 center pickup time under 10 seconds, which is a state requirement. Through the CountyStat system, and in a second I'm going to defer to Mr. Stanton, our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Public Safety, to talk maybe in a little more detail. But by bringing to this table and providing the analysis, we were able to come up with a handful of reforms that have helped get that time down to, I don't want to misspeak, so that's why I'm going to pass it off right now to Mr. Stanton. And we also have Charlene Flaherty, who runs the 911 center, who can also chime in as well.
Barry, you want to add something?
Just let me say one thing is that one of the problems we identified is that a response time.
I'm sorry, can I?
Barry, can you come on up here? Introduce yourselves.
I'm Barry Stanton. I'm the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Public Safety. One of the things we noticed in our 911 center is that our response time was greater than we felt comfortable with. And one of the things I felt we needed to do is look at bringing that response time down to what we call state guidelines, which is 10 seconds. What we did through CountyStat, we brought the police department, a number of other agencies together, 911, Sheriff Flaherty, the Director of Homeland Security, and staff, and we started looking at what ways we could try to bring that number down to improve response time. And so by talking to the police department, talking to other county agencies, we came up with a phone tree to deal with those non-emergency numbers and calls that were coming into the 911 center, because we felt our dispatchers were dealing with a lot of non-emergency number calls, which we wanted them to concentrate their efforts on 911 calls. So by doing that, we have substantially reduced our response time down to about 10 seconds or lower. And that's taken about 3 or 4 months. But I want to thank CountyStat, I want to thank the police department, I want to thank Homeland Security, because that was big. We actually went and talked to the state about improving that, and we did. So that's one of the ways, and Shar, if you don't mind commenting, because she's happy because we've got our response down to a point that we'll be making some announcements about accreditation. So yes. Shar?
Our accreditation, we were able to reduce call volume, and as everybody knows, if there's less phone calls to answer, you can concentrate on emergency calls in a 911 center. We reduced the calls for non-emergency calls and calls for information. Some of them, a lot of them had to do with, how do I pay a parking ticket? Things that are public safety related, but not 911 related. And we've provided a way through the phone tree to have the citizens reach the appropriate agency to get the questions answered, rather than coming into 911 and then working as a switchboard. So not only does it reduce the call volume and more efficiency, provide a more efficient process in 911, gives the citizens what they want right up front. They can reach the police department, they can reach emergency operations, they can reach the fire department, they can reach corrections or sheriff, without having to go through a long process. Through CountyStat and Mr. Stanton, Mr. Baker, and seeing that we were able to do that, it was a win-win all around at basically no cost. We worked with OITC, they put up the phone tree very quickly, very effectively. We tweaked it a little bit, and it worked within weeks. We saw a difference. Within 3 months, we've seen a huge difference. It reduced our call volume by over 100,000 last year, and it was incredible. So it's a success story.
Well, one of the things I want to reemphasize is that, well, first you'll notice that Shar and we have Director McDonough and Chief McGaugh, that they all still have their heads. So this isn't a format where we chop their heads off. You know, this is a format where we solve problems and come together in a collaborative fashion. And I think that this is a really excellent example of how we've focused on problem solving and fixing problems, not fixing blame.
More questions?
Is there any agency or any department in the county that is off limits to this? That, for example, would the county executive's office be up for review?
No. That's a good question. No, there aren't. I mean, one of the reasons that the county executive may be no. No, we're going to look at every agency, including the county executive's office and everyone. One, because it's not just, as Adam said, looking at, it's not a gotcha session. It's how do we effectively use resources also. And if you look at this collaboration and how we had to build, quite honestly, the CountyStat, it meant that budget-wise, Tom Himmler, Brad, and the executive staff had to look at who we're going to donate to the team. That means all the deputy CAOs, Betty Hager Francis with Health and Human Services. Everybody had to help out, and so that's a way of looking at the executive's office. So this is about making our government work better. With that. All right, thank you very much. See you at the next CountyStat. Good job.